what we are facing right now these days is there is a problem of shadow data and the shadow IT. So with the mechanisms such as like bring your own devices, a lot of mobile devices running inside enterprises, right? And we have this kind of things going on in the market. There is an app for everything, right? We are actually transacting with applications on a routine basis, but we don't know, enterprises don't know what is happening at the back end. For example, what kind of data that is being transmitted to those cloud applications. Very important part, what kind of information is being leaked through the document sharing process and things like that. So in order to do that, we first really need to understand what shadow data is like. This is something that enterprises need to know at the moment. And the important part in here is that they really want to see whether users that are sitting inside an organization or an enterprises, what kind of data transactions and what kind of interactions they're going to have with the cloud applications. That is the foremost of very, very important part. And that's where shadow IT is another one. Shadow IT basically revolves around the process of finding unknown devices or anything, gadgets that are running inside the enterprises and data. That's what is being communicated with the cloud applications. So the visibility is the most important part, because once you know that what users are doing with the cloud applications, what kind of data is being shared, transmitted across the network, a lot of analytics can be formed to understand what is being inside the enterprises. So as a part in overall those scenarios, the most important part that we have to look into this is doing some kind of business readiness rating for the cloud applications. Enterprises need to know some of the sanctioned applications and unsanctioned applications down the lane. So that is, I think, was one of the major threat that we are seeing at the moment. Irrespective of that, adding up to that is the cloud threats, different kind of threats that are associated with the cloud application, data exfiltration, we're talking about malware distribution, account hijacking, session hijacking kind of threats that are actually putting you at a risk. Because what happened at the end of the day, that once your accounts are being compromised and cloud applications, you're running with the SSO, single sign-on. So one account is being used for multiple services. Once it is being accessed or controlled, you're losing access to a lot of different things. So that is, I think, was some of the interesting problems that we're seeing at the moment.
Thank you for that. Maybe moving down the line, Five9, a company that kind of takes lots of requests in the contact center that, lots of agents who are on the line. Like, what are some of the considerations for building a cloud service that kind of has consumers that are calling in and keeping those conversations and that data protected? What are some things that...
So the number one hurdle will always be when we encounter a prospect. By the way, we love small businesses. We cater to small businesses and as well as enterprises. But the number one hurdle will be once you meet with a prospect, and the traditional approach in security will be this. If you meet the CIO, CTO, security engineering team, is your cloud secure? Because I'm not 100% sure what you guys do and what you're going to do with my data. That's their number one concern, always. So since everything will be offloaded to the cloud. So as a cloud service provider, from day one, you need to build up this relationship with your prospect, with your customer. You need to be transparent. What you can do, what your limitations as a cloud security provider, what the consumer is supposed to do with their data, because cloud security is the security model for cloud security is a shared responsibility. It's between the consumer and the cloud service provider. It's not always 100% cloud service provider. So you need to be transparent with your customer. Hey, once you sign up for a service, all your voice data, we will store that, but your CRM data, your customer data, you have the capability to store that to your own on-premise system or an external service that's not under our control. So here are the tips on how to stay secure if you choose to store with us or on an external CRM. So being transparent at a very early stage, engaging with your customer, your limitations as a cloud service provider, and give them tips on how to be safe as a cloud consumer, right? Cloud service consumer.
So maybe Neil, to your being on the Cloud Security Alliance and coming from a security officer, role, having a broad view of things. There are organizations like the like ISO and IEEE and ACM that work on standards, and then there's what actually happens in the operating of an actual company. Do you think there's room to have the standards bodies help to create some standards in security, or what's your view about how we should move forward, private and then public?
I think there's plenty of security standards, advice, best practices out there, right? You know, if you look at the ISO model, it's pretty holistic. If you look at like a SOC 2.2, it's really hard to do. You know, and what it really does is it helps you translate or communicate to a customer, as an example, of a business, why they should trust you, right? Because trust is hard. Trust is often based on long-time experience, right? If you trust a friend, that comes not in the first 4 weeks, but comes over years. Unfortunately, in the business, you don't have the luxury to just say, well, let's just get to know each other, and then in 2 years I'm going to trust you. Right? That doesn't work. So somehow we need to get to a point to trust each other a little quicker, and you need facts, you need transparency in the data. So, you know, a lot of cloud providers have certain certifications, and that's good. That's a good start. It forces them to really go through a list of things, making sure they don't forget any area. Holistic is really the key word, because if you're just strong in security in one area and you ignore another, you haven't really done anything, right? So it needs to be like across the board. Then it comes to the real, practical, day-to-day work. Let me just tell you this. At the peak time at Zynga, we had close to 90,000 servers, you know, Amazon's largest customer, and you know, spread all over the world with 25 million active daily users hitting you from pretty much any country. And at that point, you realize that all these standards, they're great, but they don't hit reality. Right?
Yeah.
It's a different beast. And what I want people to understand is there is a piece of security that is really hard to describe in language. It comes with experience. It comes with having worked at different companies. At some point you know what to look for. And while a lot of vendors, try to tell you just buy the product and the world will be a better place, that's great marketing, but the reality is security is hard. It really is, right? So more reason for you, if you want to be a cloud company or you want to buy cloud services, to really go deeper, ask for questions. You know, when I am on the phone, I was yesterday on the phone helping a company, for example, to do the right thing. And I listen to very specific things that are not in the standard, right? It's like, how forthcoming is somebody? Are they just answering your question literally, or do you feel you can really trust them because they say, hey, look, we want to do business with you, we're very open, we'll tell you anything you want to know, right, how we do things, because we want you to come to us and be our customer, but we want you to stay, right? So it's really the attitude often that gives away, you know, how people think. I'd rather deal with a company that tells me, you know what, this is a good question, we haven't really been thinking about this. But now that you ask this, or we've heard it 2 times, we will. Versus somebody says, don't worry about it, this is all cool, we have this under control. You know, and by the way, we can't really tell you, our lawyers tell us not to talk about it. You know, so pay attention to this. You know, security is a complex beast, so that's really my key point.
Yeah. Thinking to like current events, you know, we just came out of campaign season, and you see like stuff being leaked, and you see companies getting hacked. What are the maybe top 2 or 3 things from each of you guys that consumers should be doing when they're accessing their daily, you know, cloud services, whether that's email or whether that's, you know, storing their pictures and videos somewhere?
Yeah, so as per my understanding, I always treat studying the 1 point. Security is always a process. You will become more mature with the passage of time. So there's nothing 100% in this world. If we reduce the percentage, like if at a 60% and then we get a more mature to the 71, 80%, we are still improving. And that is where we need to go. Now getting back to your question on that, I think the more important part is that surfing habits is one of the most important parts, right? We just don't know. We want to go to a specific website and we just click it, right? I mean, if you're doubtful, if you're skeptical about your phishing email or any email, you know, just make sure you don't click it. But that is not what is happening these days. It's like, so they put you in a situation like it's such a scenario that you really want to click that link and you cannot resist yourself because you want to go there, right? And if you see, look at the scenario, how botnets are being formed, how malware is being distributed, spear phishing attack is one of the most important attack vector. But again, what we are seeing these days is that in the context of cloud applications, employees knowingly or unknowingly making a lot of mistakes when they are handling their documents on the cloud. I just want to give you a highlight of one very interesting scenario of what we have seen recently as a part of our threat research labs. Typically, looking into where the cloud threats residing, so we found that invoice documents for $1 billion consulting firm exposed on the internet. So if you know the internals of various cloud applications, you can build your automated program and then you can spawn those programs on the internet and you will find a lot of interesting stuff. But I just want to highlight from a threat perspective, from an employee perspective, in the context of enterprises or from user, once you're sharing your documents, how you're sharing it, there are a lot of controls in those applications, whether you're following it or not. Again, as you mentioned earlier, the important part is it's a shared responsibility, right? They are giving you a lot of options, for securing yourself, but whether you are doing it or not. But as I mentioned on the case study where we found that of the invoice document, in this competitive landscape, right? If any competitor get a hold of those documents and okay, I'm giving this consulting service, it's 200 grand, it's a significant impact and a business loss to the organization. So, prevent yourself from the, get encountering with the malware, make sure you're following surfing habits, make sure when you are doing sharing, don't share it within a broad manner, and things like that, and have some, standard security practices, updates, have secure browser add-ons and all those kind of things.
Right. So the beauty of cloud services, number one is all you need is a browser, right? Nowadays, all you need is a browser. No need for installation or anything of traditional software that you need to install. Download, install, click, click, click. Now all you need is a browser. You type the URL, you type the like Salesforce.com or 59.com or any other company that you simply access from a browser, software as a service. So as a consumer, my number one advice would be, please make not even better password, make stronger passwords, like username passwords. You need to protect this. So the best approach would be not only using a stronger password, but use multi-factor authentication. It's the trend nowadays. It's easy, right? It's enable Google two-factor authentication. So before you can log in, you need a username, a password, and a PIN token, right? A random token that's texted to you, or you can easily open on your app. Google Security is doing that. Google is also doing that, so it's easy. I think it's one of the easiest security you can apply as a cloud consumer to protect your data. Because remember, if you're, for example, you're using a cloud-based retirement account, half of your life worth is in there. And if you're using password, your username is Ron, your password is 1123. Nothing's gonna help you, right? It's we need to educate consumers of cloud services to make stronger passwords and enable the built-in security features of these cloud applications, like multi-factor authentication. That's my number one recommendation.
Think about it this way. I think the compute power that is available to every person on the planet right now, literally on the planet, exceeds anything they've ever seen before. And it's a little bit like you would give every person on the planet the ability to drive a very powerful car or truck. But they never got any driving lessons. And, the one advice I keep on giving is like, if you have the ability to use something, you need to understand how it works and what it does. Right? And you go into a new car, sure, there's certain things that are always the same. The blinker's always going to be here. There's things that are different. And you kind of want to know. There's some things you really don't need to know. The radio you can figure out later, but like, hey, if the brake works differently or whatever, this is important. Why is it important? Because if you don't know how it works, you could crash. The difference in computing is you might not crash immediately, and if you do, you might not feel the impact of that until much later, which is really the biggest problem in security. If you think about human behavior, right, we all are, it's instinct. Anything that could hurt us right away, be extremely careful about it. We are. That's just human behavior. In computing, there's a delay to the pain for companies, for individuals. And that is why people do certain things. I have these conversations all the time with people. I'm like, look, what you just did, somebody could get to, your personal data. I don't really have anything, whatever. It's like, And then I say, okay, let's talk about this for a moment, right? You go through it, and it's like suddenly like, oh, wow, really? I didn't realize that, right? Because again, they got into a car and they didn't realize like what does it actually mean to drive it? What's the implication? So when you, whatever you do, whether you start a company, run a company, or just a consumer of cloud services, number one, you need to understand what they do really and how they do it and how you want to use it. And just like, making it easy, just browser, click, and tick, 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 through is not enough. That's like going into the car and turning the car on and stepping on the gas. That is not understanding how the car works. I'm sorry. Right? So that would be my advice. Take that back and spread that thing out to others to understand what you're doing and the impact or the implications of that.
If I put in an analogy, like it's always best to take a baby steps when you're encountering any new technology, for example, cloud. And I want to put in this perspective, like any technology that enters in the market which is new, it usually be treated on a span of 10 to 15 years, right? And if I stick to the cloud is still in the initial stages, like we are in the era of like still 4 or 5 years, pretty new, and we have to still run for next 6, 10 years. And it needs to be understood, as Nils mentioned. But again, there is a question that we have to ask ourselves, being a consumer, or as a security service provider like us, like providing a security solutions, to what extent you need to know. Because sometimes if you have a overwhelming knowledge, sometimes it's not required at that moment, because consumers are only stuck with a lot of other things at the moment. They are doing multiple things and they don't know. As I mentioned, you got a phishing email, like a CEO spoof attack, right? You just got it, okay, it's coming from my CEO, right? I mean, I need to react to it. Yeah? But at that present point of time, from a security point of view, training is the most important part. Education, awareness about cybersecurity perspectives. And from a cloud security side, definitely step by step you need to know, okay, I'm using the Google Cloud apps, okay, to what extent I need to know about the internals or the functionality. So two things are different here. If you're going too much deep, being a technical guy, you can go into how the Google app works, what is the different technologies they are using at the back end. But as a consumer, I really want to understand what kind of functionality that they have provided in a user interface that can actually help me to restrict the access, to restrict the control, or actually give the control to other employees or other colleagues in the scenario. So I think concentrating on those scenarios, understanding the product features from outside, what you are going to interact, how you are going to interact with the product, I think is the most important part. And sometimes when, okay, we all talking about there is an app for that and things like that, it's understandable. But okay, we always go after, okay, if you're installing any app, try to do some background research, what it is all about and things like that. We have seen that people install apps, but at the back end they are sharing a lot of data and that are being sold to everyone. So why do you receive an email from a marketing or a sales guy when you've never been encountered with that service, right? So what is going at the back end? So that comes back to the same question, shadow data, shadow IT. So from a consumer point of view, I think the most important part is to just try to understand what kind of initial security features are provided by the software and to go from that and try to understand, rather than going and understanding the internals. Many people don't have the time to do it. Sometimes even you do.
Yeah, you made me think about like the EULAs and like the long SLAs.
Don't read it, right? Scroll down, click.
It's really something that if you were to poll people, it doesn't seem like many people would know the ins and outs of what the cloud service provider is offering. And then another example is like, if you look at your Facebook account, you're like, how many different people know how much data can be accessed versus cannot be accessed about their own profile based on the settings that Facebook has given you to play around with. And I think it, basically boils down to time, like you're talking about. A lot of people are busy, and maybe they don't understand the full impact of kind of how exposed they actually are. So maybe if I move to a question about maybe the world that most people live in, like browsing versus kind of if you were a hacker, there's the dark web, there's like all the different ways to kind of get at information. What do you think some of the most eye-opening insights around kind of what a hacker's view to the world are, and like how easy it is to like actually access data that's not yours? I'll start with you.
Well, so the world of security is a little bit like a rubber band that when you take it out, it's about this long. But actually, when you stretch it, it's like this long. And unfortunately, what you just mentioned, the media, everyone just focuses on the extremes. foreign hackers, the groups, highly sophisticated, unlimited funds. And it's very easy, for even a fairly technical person to get completely lost and say, oh my God, right? And I actually don't want to focus on it, right? Because honestly, the number of companies that can successfully, defend against that type of threat is very, very small. Let's just be very honest about that, right? The amount of money you would have to spend is just enormous. So let's not talk about, these type of extremes, but there's so much that comes before, and it goes back a little bit to, you don't really have to be a techie to understand it. Just pay attention. When things look different, or when things suddenly happen, for example, on your laptop that haven't happened before, that look different, or look too good to be true. It's really simple user behavior that can catch this. Give you an example. I was speaking at a conference in Singapore a couple of weeks back, and I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, and I always VPN. That's a different story. But anyway, as I disconnect the VPN, I get this certificate alert on my machine because I run obviously a couple other things. And I'm looking at this certificate and I'm thinking, oh my God, there is actually somebody trying to man in the middle. Everyone who's attending a security conference, including politicians and representatives from other countries, and siphoning out data. Okay. That alert, anyone could have spotted. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people would just have clicked OK or accept and move forward. Right? But if you really think about it, something happened on my machine that normally doesn't happen. And now I have a chance to say, wow, this is odd, this is odd. Hold on, where am I? Different country, event. You put it together, and then you err on the cautious side. You say, no, I'm not going to accept that. You don't have to understand what happened in the background there. You really don't, right? It's really that simple. So I would really encourage people to pay more attention to these things that just look odd. Just err on the cautious side. That's the problem.
Yeah. Anything to add to that?
Since I think when everyone uses email, right, and when probably the most top attack or attack vector is phishing, right? Because everyone's using email. So since this is a digital marketing event, so is everyone familiar with the CTA, call to action, right? So it applies as well when it comes to phishing. So we need to be careful when we see an email that looks too good to be true and there's a call to action. What's a call to action in a phishing email? It's either he wants you to click on a link, download a file, or give information. Like, hey, I'm from your tech support. Your account has been blocked by IT because you're sending a lot of phishing, a lot of spam to C-level executives. I need your username and password to fix it. That's a red flag. Number 2 is, hey, can you click on this link? Because I'm tech support from your insurance agency. I need to look into your claim. Can you click on this link, please? That's the second call to action, right? Red flag. And the third one is which is the most obvious, is downloading something and saving it in your computer. That's another red flag. So bad guys are smart. Phishing is getting to be sophisticated. Every time I look into a new phishing attack, wow, these guys are smart. Pixel perfect copy of an email signature. And the only thing that you will notice that's different from the legitimate email from your CTO is the domain name. For example, 59.com, FIVE, then the number 9, it's going to be FVE9.com. When you're opening a smartphone, if you're a business executive and you're opening that email on a smartphone, you're not going to notice that. You're going to click on that link. And bad guys are so smart, they can, if you click on the link, they can redirect you to a legitimately looking site, but actually a site that they control. So every time you type in your credentials, they own it now. After they capture your credentials, they will redirect you to the real site. So, oh, okay, I logged in successfully, but it's not, right? They got your details already, so they've compromised account. So, pay attention to call to action email that looks too good to be true. And always verify through phone. Hey, did you guys call your tech support, or call your security team, or call someone who's pretending to be that guy or that person? Hey, did you send me this email asking for this? You want me to give my username and password? Click on this link or give password, just checking, just to be sure. So always trust but verify, right?
That you hit on an interesting point about, once you click, they might pass you through to the actual page you requested, which to the user, you don't even know that you've been hacked. And I've seen, statistics about,
Exactly.
100, 200 days, like a hacker is in a company's network and they have no idea that anybody's in there, that anything's been broken. So can you guys talk to the motivation behind that? Why would a hacker not want to cause a scene in the beginning? Like, what's to be gained by just being in and like having access?
So I think I will be biased to this question because I've been doing this research on the botnets and malware attacks for the last 7 to 10 years. Published a lot of papers in IEEE, underground economy, botnets, starting from Zeus, SpyEye, just to be there, the baseline. I think if you look at from the cultural shift for the last 10 years, earlier, people were building botnets for fun and profit, right? Profit was like not up to that level, but fun was the most important part. Hey, I'm a hacker, right? And then they're gonna launch denial of service attacks and things like that. It's happening these days too. But if you look at for the last 6 to 7 years, they are much more financially motivated, right? Started in 2009, 2008 when we all started talking about Zeus botnet, and then there was a variation came in like SpyEye, Citadel, a lot of Dire and all that, right? The most important part, they are going after you and your money at the moment. And for example, I'm talking about some of the initial things you can definitely decipher when you're working on your laptops, but the most important part here is that when they go advanced, right? So whole of my PhD revolves around the man in the browser attacks. It is different from man in the middle. So man in the middle is sitting in the network, but man in the browser, the malware is installed in your system and it can hijack all your browser sessions. So it doesn't matter, right, whether you're going to an encrypted website. Before encryption, the malware is going to steal those things, right? So when you say your clear text username and password is available on the dark web, how is that possible? Because you think you're going on an encrypted channel with the Google Docs and all the things like that, but why it is happening? Because the attack is happening inside from your machine, because the attacker is inside your machine. Other set of network level attacks, application attacks are there, but this is a very definitive problem. It's a whole layer of underground economy that persists, that we don't know about, where all your... So I want to use a term called as crimeware as a service, to talk about that. And it's just like attackers are now building automated software to perform hacking, right? To form distributed denial of service attacks. So they have, so they can come up with the services like ransomware, right? So ransomware is a service. You can go, you can buy, give a few dollars, they give you a proper web portal, you can build your own ransomware with the capability. So all these services exist, and this is a part of the underground cyber economy, right? So we are living in this world where all these things persist, but we don't know about it. So they go advanced, they are after you, they are after your money. So you have seen, search on Google, you find a lot of financially motivated attacks, right? So things like that, when we talk about application issues, network level issues, okay, man in the middle, it's very good. Application layer where websites are vulnerable to SQL injection, cross-site scripting, where they can use to actually exploit and distribute malware. The end result is that they want to get into your system. And once they have the control of your system, they can do whatever they want. And you having no clue about it, right? But I just want to set up this thing, right? We are living in the world where underground cyber economy persists, crimeware services are there, and all these things exist. Attackers are becoming, they're earning a lot of money, which we don't know about it, but it's siphoning out. Recent, the UK bank attack, right? They took all the money out of their bank account. Although you have a cyber insurance for 250 grand, right, with a chase and all that, but it still doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your money is gone. Yeah, that's happening.
So, Niels, I'll give you either same question about the motivations, or I have this next question in my mind about post-breach. So after a Sony or Home Depot or Neiman Marcus, or after that, kind of what happens, and like, do you have examples of kind of how a company could get back on a good foot after an incident?
I'll choose the second, because the first one we can talk like for days. I think it just freaks people out, realizing how bad it is. But let's talk about the second question you kind of offered. After breach or incident, which is a little different. So actually, move a little bit of the timeline before. You should always operate under the assumption that this will happen at some point to you, right? Like the times of like, well, you know, if we have a breach, yeah, okay. If somebody wants to go after your stuff, they will be successful eventually. Just remember that. It's like if somebody eventually wants to break into your house and they have enough time on their hands and enough money for tools, they will be able to deliver you an alarm system on that. Okay, that's just the world we live in. So knowing that this is inevitable and at some point it will happen, you really should operate under the premise of like, okay, so what do we have to prepare for the day when this happens? Like things like communication plans if you're a larger company, but you know, how do you speak to your customers? How do you deal with law enforcement? If you go that route, how do you disclose if you have to? How do you clean up a mess? How do you make sure you know you have killed everything off that was bad, which is really, really hard, and there's no remnants left. But there's another piece that often people don't talk about, and that is like, how do you ensure that your company will recover quickly and move forward? And it's a term that was started to be used in security, a couple of years back, business resiliency. Okay. A resilient company is one that is basically doing risk management, is thinking about scenarios. What about if we lose our biggest customer, right? What about if our talent runs away and we have to hire new people? There's many risk scenarios that can impact a company. Security is one of them. What about if we have a bigger risk, right? Okay, how do we get back on our feet? How do we, recover our data? You have backup, it's great, but you never tested it. Oops, you need it, it probably doesn't work. Murphy's Law, right? So, like, what steps do you take to be confident and comfortable that if the day comes, it will take you perhaps a week, and you're like perfectly up and running again? That needs to be the goal. The goal cannot be, this will not happen to us. The wrong goal. The goal has to be, how do we recover quickly, and how do we look our customers in the eyes and say, listen guys, this happened to us, we're really sorry. But here's all the things we did before, and we think we really prepared and protected well, but we got hit anyway. I guarantee you most people will say, all right, you're honest, transparent, you came clean, you tried hard, we are sorry it happened to you. We might even be a little upset with you for a while, but we'll actually come back and do business with you because we like your attitude about it. You need to prepare this and think this through.
Yeah, so maybe to extend that, I heard an interesting term maybe a couple months ago, chaos engineering, where you build something under the assumption that it'll get hacked or it'll break. There's an example of like Netflix injecting what's called the Chaos Monkey software into their application and having it break stuff and pull ports, and their application being resilient enough to still be up and functional for their end users. So maybe from a 5.9 context, from a security context, like how would you think about that notion of, yes, one day we're going to get breached, but how do we build our application so that even after an incident occurs, our end user impact is minimal and we can continue moving forward and resilient as a business?
Exactly. So we, as a company, we are biased towards availability because, like how I explained the way our business operates, a lot of companies rely on our cloud-based telephony system and CRM, like millions of calls every day. So number one for us is availability. There's a lot of planning, extensive planning that have been conducted in the past, and also preparing for the future, forward-looking statements and plans, that we do a lot of scenario-based testing. When this server farm goes down, we need to be sure customers will not be impacted. Majority of us are cloud consumers of cloud-based services. So as much as possible, we don't want you guys to be impacted when there's a service disruption. There should be like a seamless flow from a user experience perspective, that you will not encounter any issues when you're on the phone. You're on the phone with a customer and using our service. When your primary server gets impacted, at the back end, we will have the intelligence to automatically route your data, your voice call, to the backup server or backup farm without impacting your user experience. So that's what we prepare for and what we plan for as a company.
I have to jump in there because what I heard is primarily technical abilities or technical controls around resiliency. But I'm talking about more than that. Let's be very clear. You know, business resiliency is really a corporate matter. It's not just a technical matter. Because you can have all of this that is described, right? But let's say after disaster, you realize that the guys you actually need to like fix the back end are all home caring for their family. And you didn't plan for that. So resiliency is more than just a technical piece. You can build technology very resilient, only to not have the people to actually, you know, that change the dial. So you really need to think through, like, who would do what, you know. We are here in the Bay Area, so I always see these business continuity plans of companies, and I shake my head. It's all under the assumption that everyone will come to work. No. And VPNs won't work, and most likely the internet won't work, right? Like, you have to think through, like, okay, and it's fine that you say, you know, actually we don't need people for 2 weeks, you know, because it's all in the cloud and we can, you know, perhaps call and somebody else, remote hands, will do stuff for us. That's okay, but you need to think about it. You know, not thinking about it, not writing things down is just a recipe for a disaster. You can have chaos monkey and security monkey and whatever, right? That's all great. But at the end of the day, you need a little bit more. Like, for example, how do you pay your people? Because the ATM machines won't work. The bank accounts most likely won't work, you know. So you want people to show up, you know, while one of their family members might be injured, let's say from a large earthquake, and then you tell them, but I can't pay you for the next 8 weeks. Well, that's not going to go over well. So really, you know, thinking this all through, like, what that means.
So outside of tech, maybe think about like Chipotle, right? You know, they fix the issue, but the customers maybe aren't coming back as quickly as they want. Which lines of business or which departments should be responsible to do the non-tech stuff, or is it a combination of pretty much all hands on deck in terms of putting planning together, putting documents together that will outline what's supposed to happen after something like that?
Yeah. So I think Nels covered a couple of points, but I think this one is a very timely question because in our company we are just maturing our breach notification process and the policy. And the important and bigger challenge is that, okay, you come to know that there is an incident, what you're going to do next? And because what happened, whenever there's some incident happened, chaos happened, right? So two things are there. You need to have a well-defined policy, what steps you're going to go after. And then you have to have some training for those kind of policies upfront in case if some incident happened. Okay, you have like technical capabilities, we're going to go after, okay, the team lead's going to meet, they're going to decide the plan, okay, we'll batch those things in 24 hours and all those things. But the biggest challenge that comes to play is the notification to the customers also. You want to notify to the customer, right? I'm talking a little bit on the legal side because it's a big aspect.
Yeah.
And what happens in those scenarios when you're saying you have to communicate with the customers at the end of the day, you need to think about what brand name you are in, right? If you are a big $1 million company, the time you are going to send an email, encrypted email to the customer, you are liable to a lot of lawsuits if it's not going to go well. Because people are going to go after. That comes back to Nils' point that, okay, you need to have a proper trust with your customers, how you're going to tell them, things like that. But from the company who got breached, right, it's a big thing for them. So it got multiple layers, okay, as a security guy, I'm going to sign it off, okay, we're going to disclose this information. It's going to go to legal going to go to then CISO for a final approval, then it's going to get communicated. Right? It's not an easy task. Handling, okay, we can contain the incident to some extent, okay, take down the servers, get it from the backup and everything.
Yeah.
But the real issue from a breach comes how you're going to notify to the customers. Recent, what they are claiming is like once you validate the incident, it should be 24 to 72 hours. It's not an easy time period, right? I mean, once you start notifications. And I think it's a lot of legal that you need to think about. You really need to think about technology and you really need to think about availability. In every cloud environment, you need to have an availability response plan in place.
Yeah.
If your cloud goes down, what else? We did see that in Australia when Amazon went down. A few days back, we see a denial of service attack on the time service. So you need to have how fast you're gonna make your system running. So all these factors comes to play. It's a big picture. You cannot color it with the one point. It's like, you know, legal, technical, communication, how it needs to go, then PR, marketing. Stay away, but you never know, right?
So we got about 10 more minutes, and I want to open it up for some questions out in the audience. And if you got anything that you learned or anything you want to kind of double click on, feel free. Any questions out there? Yeah, DJ.
So a lot of us are marketers in the audience, and I think part of being a marketer in the digital age is we want to be a good digital citizen. So I think the area that at least I'm most experienced in is like phishing attacks, especially being an email marketer. How can we be good digital citizens, like when we see a phishing attack? What should we do from the consumer side of that, I guess?
Okay. So I will add 2 quick points to it. First one is that again, when we talk about the good surfing habits, it's going to apply to across our region, right? For example, you're dealing with a certain set of people, but then a certain email comes from your CEO, right? Targeting, okay, I want to have some kind of information from you, right? And then you say like, hey, in the last 6 months, 7 months, I never got an email. It's not my regular channel communicating with him. It's a kind of anomaly, right? But again, with the phishing kind of attack, you got more mature with trainings, right? You have like a lot of companies out there, PhishMe, other kind of things that actually do automated testing targeting users. But I just wanted a quick real case study to it because the digital marketing, what we found during our analysis. So I found that during our research that a couple of media related, digital marketing related documents where you guys are using third-party services for brand and content marketing. So there is one proper Excel file having all the username and password stored in a clear text in that, and they were sharing it through the Google Apps, right? Google Storage Drive and everything. Somebody made a mistake and shared it broadly. So that file got accessible to the outer on the internet, right? But when we got an access to that file, right, there's a complete username and passwords for every third-party service that a digital guy was using. So you can look at from a risk, business and risk impact, like how much is going to be a problematic for a company who's doing business, because once they can inject any kind of unauthorized content and things like that, and it's going to screw your business and marketing down the lane. So my caution turns back to that, sometimes, at least in cloud applications, a good surfing habits, a good management, or basically handling the software actually prepares you from a lot of standard side of issues. Like broad sharing is one of the biggest problems in cloud applications on documents. So you want to make sure that what you're sharing, make it restricted. If you're sharing with 10 guys, right, and then 10 guys don't need to be edit operation, like why do you give them the edit rights? Like why you're sharing it broadly? Make sure once the purpose is solved, you take it down, and sort of things like that.
Sounds like education. Whoever inside of your companies is going to be responsible for educating about these policies, and like that'll be the first step. And then once people start to internalize, then you'll see behaviors maybe changing and things get a little bit better. Okay, beautiful. Any other questions out there? See one in the back.
Yeah, so I'm a frontend developer, and I implement like tracking techniques and that type of techniques in the web development. And so we will be able to use cookie or something to track the customers, and then we gather data. And then, for example, if we send it to if we store the data in Google Analytics, and it's in the cloud and all that stuff. And there's kind of a contradictory point when you're looking at this, because the customers, they want to protect themselves. So they'll use app blockers or tracking blocker or anything, post-free, that kind of software to block whatever we marketers are trying to do to gather information from them. So I was wondering, like, what would be your point of view? Like, how do we balance this kind of thing? Because I know more and more people are using blockers, and, but we still want to, as marketers, we still want to track and analyze the performance of what we are doing. And most of the scripts are actually pretty harmless, but I guess people are much more aware of the tracking right now, so they are using these types of software much more.
I would like to jump in there. So I'm predicting literally a war between the advertisement industry and the end consumer. And the reason for that is that for years, I think a big part of a digital economy lived under the premise we'll do whatever we get away with. Okay? And it's a little bit like with everything in life, and you just you have an opportunity but you don't kind of limit yourself, then you go to an extreme and then the pendulum goes back. I can tell you during my time, and I ran security, we looked heavily into the digital marketing advertisement industry. And from a pure security and danger point of view, I would say it's the worst of the worst. Okay? The dependency between companies on whether it's banner ads or what have you, there is no filtering, there is no double checking. I mean, it's literally like just passing anything on, and it's the perfect storm to waiting to happen. I can tell you this. So my advice would be, if you are in the long game in the digital marketing world, and I think that's the only game, to be honest. It has to be a long game. It has to be about your branding and name. You need to start today, and it goes back a little bit to your question. You need to start today to build a name based on being a good digital citizen. Okay? Because at some point, consumers will have a chance who they want to allow to track them. Now, the technology will be there, trust me, with AI and everything coming, the technology will be there. Right? So at some point, and you can argue Google has a good job. They offered free things for you, and people say, all right, in return I know you're going to track me, but you're helping me too, you're doing good things for me. But why did they do it? Because they realized it's a long game. And all these marketers that just like, crash and burn, like going hard and heavy and then end up having a huge problem. I also think that hacking groups will specifically go after digital marketing firms. They will expose the worst of the worst. And I don't think that necessarily digital marketers have large security staff either. So my assumption is that that won't even be really hard. Right? So just prepare for this, right?
Yeah.
You asked, how can we be like a good digital citizen? Okay, it's more than technology. It's like being transparent on your website, give people a chance to go to your site and look you up. What are you all about? What do we track? What do we not track? Here's how you opt out. And not just stuff like, hey, you want to unsubscribe from our email list? Guess what? It takes 2 weeks to take you off.
Yeah.
That's baloney. It's a split second, right? Like when I see that, it's like you end up on my blacklist. Stuff like that, right? You are in the business of trust and a brand name and recognition. And it's not just, hey, let me just scoop up with a big bottom net, however many fish I can get out of the ocean, whether they're healthy or not. That's not enough. Sorry, not more.
Neil's pretty much sums it up perfectly. But just to add, since you're a little bit detailed, since you're into you're a developer, software development, I think my number one advice would be for you to understand security, so you can engineer things around it. Because I run into the same issues. Because like what I said, I work with a digital marketing team almost every day. So when they present a website and I scan it and I manually poke around it, it's not secure. Guess what? It's using mixed content like HTTP and HTTPS, and you're storing cookies in not HTTPS. You can acquire HTTPS, and you learn fundamental security engineering techniques around web application. So as a digital marketer designing apps, you can design your web application, your tracking analytics to work around security, not defeat security, but work around with it. That's the best way. That's the compromise that you're looking for.
Well, I want to thank you guys for viewing. Can you join me in thanking the panel for